Hello everyone, today's video will be a little bit different than some of the others I've created on this channel. The setting will still be mountaineering, but this time we will cover two different stories in a shorter format. If you guys like this style and want to see more of it in the future, please like the video and comment below. It really does help out the channel, and I love to read your feedback, so thank you. Many consider Zsolt Eross to be Hungarian's most successful high-altitude climber. There is a very good reason for that, as his story is one of a kind. Many may consider it hard to believe, but trust me, it is true. Zsolt started his climbing career like many do in their younger days, by venturing to surrounding peaks. He was born in Mérkőrizi, a small town in Transylvania, Romania, and would start to climb at the age of 13. Between 1981 and 1988, Zsolt climbed several Transylvania mountains, but as his skills developed, his desire to reach new heights grew stronger. In 1988, Zsolt's mother would take both her sons to live in Hungary. With a knack for climbing and dealing with heights, Zsolt quickly found work as an industrial alpinist, which is basically someone that builds or maintains large man-made structures, normally at heights where their only safety is typically a support rope. When Zsolt wasn't scaling high-rise buildings, he would occasionally search for expeditions to join, with his first one being in 1990 at Elbrus. Now Elbrus is certainly no 8,000er, but it's not a mountain to be taken lightly either. Sitting at 5,642 meters, it is a dormant volcano and the highest peak in Russia. It was not long before Zsolt became a Hungarian citizen in 1992, and he would happily live in the country as he joined different expeditions. Over the span of the next 20 years, Zsolt would accomplish many summits, and the most notable are shown here. As you can clearly see, Zsolt had summited 8 8,000ers by 2009, but that's not even the most interesting part of this story. In early 2010, Zsolt was on a climbing expedition on the Tatra Mountains. The mountain range is located in the western Carpathians. They are not large when compared to others, as the highest peak being 2,499 meters, but they do form a natural border between Slovakia and Poland. Now in this expedition, Zsolt faced some unusual hardships that were not anticipated. Most notably, there was an avalanche that occurred in his climbing path. He would be rescued, but not without a cost. Zsolt had to have his right leg amputated due to the accident. There was a movie created about his ordeal, and I would recommend anyone interested in his story to go watch it, as I will not be covering the details of the incident. Anyone that has had to recover from major injury will understand the effort it takes to get back to your normal life. And that's even if you get to keep all limbs. In Zsolt's case, he had to learn how to climb again, all from a new perspective. I can only imagine the emotional feelings and hardships he had to go through just to be able to return to his true love. He spent the entire year of 2010 recovering and would be given a prosthetic limb to continue his climbing. It was grueling work, but by 2011, Zsolt was ready to conquer a new peak. One would think that after his experience, he would start it off easy. But no, Zsolt chose to climb an 8,000er, and more specifically, Lhotse. In May of 2011, he successfully summited the peak, making it his 9th 8,000er. If we have learned anything from Zsolt's story so far, it's that he doesn't quit. So of course, 2 years later in 2013, Zsolt would set his eyes on the peak of Kanchenjunga. The expedition would take place in the middle of May, and Zsolt would be accompanied by his friend and climbing partner Peter Kiss. They would successfully summit the mountain on May 20th, with the documentation to prove it, I might add. However, during their descent, Zsolt started to feel very weak, so in a very uncharacteristic move, he set up camp in the death zone to rest. Peter continued down the mountain that day and would make it to Camp 4 at 7,600 meters. They both rested well that night. Now the next day, Peter climbed back up to meet Zsolt, which was surprising as this was not commonly done, even if you were friends. Nevertheless, both climbers would successfully group up together and begin their descent again. They could be seen in the distance as they neared the location of Camp 4, but that's right when everything went wrong. For some reason, Kiss fell and was lost to the mountain. Now, it's unclear how bad the conditions were, but they were not considered to be that dangerous. I've certainly covered many stories where the weather played a big role, but that doesn't seem to be the case here. It was guessed that exhaustion and hallucinations played a bigger impact in causing Peter to fall and disappear, and Zsolt was certainly in no position to help himself either. His condition was rapidly deteriorating, as he was unaware of Peter's disappearance and sounded very confused over the radio. He began speaking incoherently, so it was advised he rest a bit before continuing. Zsolt took a nap on the mountain and woke up a few hours later feeling a little better. He certainly wasn't 100%, but at least he had his wits about him. He would continue his descent around 3 p.m., trying to reach Camp 4. Sadly, along the way he went missing and was never seen again. 2 days later, his death was confirmed as nobody could have survived the conditions for that length of time. His body was found the following year in 2014. In the end, the story has a tragic ending, but it's hard to not admire a man coming back from such adversity and still be able to summit 2 8,000ers with a prosthetic leg. Benoit Chamoux was born in the shadow of Mont Blanc, as he was destined to become a climber. The Frenchman would learn the ropes early, and by the time he was 20 years old, he would already be attempting to summit some of the most difficult mountains on our planet. Benoit loved the mountains. Some would have called it his home. Not only did he climb to enjoy the sport, but also partake in scientific expeditions to study and accurately measure each peak. He would compare them from one another and try to document the differences he noticed. In 1982, at the age of 24, he would climb Diamond Couloir in Mount Kenya, the second highest peak in Africa, standing at 5,188 meters, and a year later he would summit Huascarán in Peru, standing just below 7,000 meters. By the time Benoit turned 27, he was ready to attempt his first 8,000er, Gasherbrum 2, and after successfully summiting the peak, he would then climb Gasherbrum 1 just a week later. It became apparent quickly to everyone that Benoit was not a normal climber. He adapted quickly to the altitudes and was noticeably fast. Between the years 1986 to 1995, Benoit claimed he summited 9 of the 14 8,000ers, and if you include the 2 peaks in 1985, it would bring his total to 11. It is important to note that 3 of the summits have been disputed, and therefore are not officially credited to Benoit. The 3 mountains were Cho Oyu, Shishkapangma, and Makalu in 1995. Now, they all had their reasons for being disputed, but Makalu specifically was documented that the team reached the Central West summit and not the true summit of the mountain. During this period, Benoit's most impressive feats were in 1986, when he stood on the top of Broad Peak and just a month later climbed the Savage Mountain, K2, in 23 hours. Additionally, he would partake in a scientific climb of Everest, where they would be the first team to install a 15-kilo satellite on the roof of the world and accurately measure the highest peak at 8,848 meters on September 29, 1992, using triangulation. His scientific contributions to the mountaineering community, and quite frankly the world, cannot be overstated, but after unofficially reaching 13 summits, he couldn't help but begin preparations on his final climb of Kanchenjunga. In 1995, after unofficially summiting Makalu, Benoit, along with his partner and photographer Pierre Royer, who had scaled 8 of the 14 8,000ers, would make a run at the 8,585 meter peak with the help of a 3-man team of Sherpas. On October 4th, the 5 men would begin the climb. But just the following day, tragedies struck, as one of the Sherpas, Riku, would be killed in a fall after breaking through a serac. The team would continue, and nearing the afternoon of the 5th, the weather had changed into a full-blown blizzard. The 2 Sherpas would turn around at 8,000 meters, just 500 meters below the summit, while Benoit and Pierre would continue the climb. Most of us, after hearing a few of these stories, would think it would be insane to continue the climb without the help of Sherpas, but for the 2 men, this did not faze them in the slightest, as these were no ordinary climbers. At 5 p.m., the 2 Sherpas caught a faint glimpse of the 2 men moving slowly along the west ridge of the mountain, roughly 2.5 hours from the summit. This would be the last time that anyone would ever see the 2 men. At dawn on October 6, Base Camp received a radio transmission from Benoit. He had been forced to take shelter in his bivouac on the west ridge at 8,400 meters. He had lost contact with Pierre, who had turned around at 8,200 meters. Benoit would state that he planned to turn around and begin the descent. but he was simply not fully coherent, and after that radio call ended, unfortunately, Pierre and Benoit would never be heard from again. A week later, an Italian team climbing Kanchenjunga would find a walkie-talkie set, a climbing harness, and an ice axe above 8,000 meters, but the bodies of the two climbers would never be found. Benoit would be survived by his wife, who never stopped looking. The foundation, Benoit Chamoux, was created in the mountain climbers' honor, and to this day focuses on educating Sherpa children and families who have lost their fathers in mountaineering expeditions. Even though some of his summits are disputed, Benoit's impact on the community and his legacy will never be forgotten.